My name is Seye Awopetu. By God's grace, a trained legal practitioner and a BTH holder from Life Theological Seminary, Lagos. By God's grace, I'm also the CEO, Grow Leadership Development Center, and I'm a certified coach with the John Maxwell team. I'll be taking you on this course, corporate governance and structure. And I'm trusting God that by the time we finish this course, it will be much, much better than this time we are starting. Just relax. I'm free to ask questions in any area, in any manner that you're not, anyone that you don't understand. Thank you very much. God bless you. I want to start by just sharing this joke with you. It's not actually a joke, it's a reality. The Oedipu said, nothing without structure has a future. If you want to build something that is very enduring, then there must be a structure. I was just thinking, somebody was jokingly saying that there's a particular club, don't want to mention them, in London, that bought all the players in the world and they don't have a coach. They now recruited a coach after they bought. For me, personally, it's like trying to build from the top. You don't build from the top. And there's another club. I'm so proud because that's the club I support. They brought in someone and the person told them, he said, look, for us to become title contenders, we need 5 years planned, not just trying to buy it and succeed quickly, so that the thing will be enduring. And then the 4th year of the 5 years plan, and they're already the top contender, contending for the title. They did that last year, and they did it this year also. So what we are discussing, what we're talking about, is having a solid foundation for the structure that you are going to build. I quoted Bishop David Oyedepo that says that nothing without the structure that has a future. If you don't have a established structure, not only in building the church, we're talking about church management, but not only in building the church, but in every aspect of our lives. One thing that I've discovered the little period I spent on this heart is that if you want something to be enduring, then you must start with a solid foundation. And so with this, I'm welcoming you to this course, corporate governance and structure. And I want you to know that you are in for a very good time. Just fasten your seatbelt and let's roll. God bless you. You're welcome to the first section of this course. And we're trusting God that it's going to be in 4 parts. God helping us, first section, God's helping us. So this first section, we're going to look at what is the course objectives. Among other things, we're trusting God that students will be able to understand what corporate governance and structure means. We're also trusting God that understanding the importance and the necessity for corporate governance and structure, that the students will be able to understand the importance and the necessity for corporate governance and structure. Students also will be able to know how to set up, because that's the most important thing, corporate governance and structure. Or if you already have one, how to improve on it. The essence of this course is that you'll be able to have the knowledge, not just having the knowledge to store it, but also to apply the knowledge. Part of the course objective is that students will be able to understand what are the disadvantages of the non-existence of corporate governance and structure. What are they missing if all those things are not in place? Also, the benefits, we'll discuss the benefits of the existence of corporate governance and structure. And we'll look at corporate governance and structures of some churches, some organizations that already have it. And We'll also look at the relevant laws and the bodies that are responsible for corporate governance and structure. That's about the course objective. Then introduction. Something I want us to understand. Like Bishop Oyedepo said, it said a building without a structure, without a foundation, cannot stand. And so what we're saying is that when there is no corporate governance and structure, it's like erecting a building without foundation. You can imagine that you're going to erect a building without foundation. And it's easy to conclude that the stronger and the more solid the foundation is, that will determine the structure on it and how enduring the building will be. So, in essence, what we are learning and what we are discussing, that for every organization to stand the test of time, there must be well laid down rules that governs such organization. That's the foundation that we're talking about. And one other thing that is important to point out is that you don't start a building and then want to lay the foundation. You must start the building by laying the foundation first. We've over time you've seen people, you've seen organization trying to build from the top, but research has shown, and evidently we've seen that such organization will not last for a long time because you don't start building from the top, you start from the foundation. The structure or the wise of an organization will also determine to what extent that organization will thrive. The first time I had the privilege of visiting Europe, my conclusion was that the difference between the European nation and Nigeria that I live in is system that works. System that works. We're not talking about human being, a superhuman being. We're talking about a system, a well-organized system where things are to be done. Yes, somebody might argue that in actual fact that it's going to be human being that will put all this together. I agree. But the fact remains that if there is no system that can outlive human beings, there will be always the challenge that the thing will not last. That's why one of the common problems we have in our nation, especially Nigeria, is we talk about the maintenance culture. Our problem is not defining or making plans. Most of the time, the problem we have is how do we execute the plans? And when we execute the plans, how do we maintain it? And that's why you find that because of the structures that has been able to be well established in some developed nations, you see companies existing for years, 100 years, 150 years. But if we just look around us here, how many companies have you had that have existed for so long? Because why? There is no corporate governance. There's no structure. And you cannot build something on nothing. That's the point that we are making. And that's to what extent the organization, your church, in this instance, will be determined by the corporate governance and structure that you have put in place before you start the whole thing. An organization without a well-laid corporate governance and structure is like a nation without war. One of the things I want us to imagine is to imagine if we don't have any system of government in Nigeria, or just imagine a place where there is no system of governance. It's like everyone just behave the way they like. This one, someone will just stand up one day said he's the president of this place. Another one, by the issue of force, want to overthrow. You can just imagine if there is no federal government, no state government, no local government, you don't have the bicameral legislature, you don't have the national assemblies, you don't have the senate, you don't have the house of representative, and you don't have the state house of representative and the state house of assemblies also. And you just imagine everybody is allowed to behave the way they like. So that is what we are stressing, and that's what we're going to be discussing by the grace of God in this section. I want to thank you as we come to the end of the first section. Thank you. You're welcome to the second section. In this second section, we're going to be looking at what is corporate governance. What is corporate governance? That's what we're going to be. It's good and very important for every one of us to understand what we are discussing. And that's what we're going to be looking at this section. Corporate governance and structure is a system of rules, practice, and processes by which an organization is directed and controlled. The main purpose of corporate governance is to encourage transparency, responsibility, and accountability within the organization. What we are saying in essence is that corporate governance and structure is a well laid down plan. Call it organogram, call it structure, call it the way the organization will be run. You're not far from it. But it's very, very important, and it's important for us, for every organization that want to succeed. Not when the thing is in process, but at the beginning to sit down. It's just like building. If you're going to build a building, you don't start the building and after you started the building, you now go to your architect to now draw the plans. No, the first thing you do is to draw the plans, well laid plans, how the foundation is going to be like, depending on the story, the building you're going to put on it. You cannot lay a foundation for a 2-bedroom flat and I decide to put a mansion on top. That's what we're saying. So it must be determined. And one of the reasons, like you understand when we come to the benefits and the disadvantage of corporate governance and structure, is that when there is no corporate governance and structure, nobody can be held accountable. Nobody will be responsible. Who does this? If the person does this, who does this? Who takes responsibility for this? It's like just saying that when you say something is our work, when you say something is our work, nobody is responsible for it. But when you say this work is to be done by this person in this office, then when anything fails, you'll be able to. And transparency, it's always very important to know, like we will see as we discuss further when we come to advantages. When people know what they are going into, they give their all. But when everything is treated in secrecy, you just realize that people will not be able to understand what is going on. What is corporate governance and structure? It is distribution of rights and duty among the various stakeholders in the organization and dictates the method and the process involved in making decisions on specific affair. It also affords the structure through which the company sets up the objective to attain those objectives and monitor the organization's performance. There was this story that I heard from Bishop David Bilipo. He said he went to minister for a friend, and after the ministration on the first day they were going home, he said he realized that the set man, after they collected the offering, the wife of the set man collected the offering. And as they were driving home, they stopped to buy bread. And he said he observed that the wife of the set man dipped hand into the offering and gave it to the husband to buy bread for the man of God, the guest minister. Morally, they don't say anything wrong. Say, but he was very shocked. And like some people will say that what is wrong in using God's money to entertain God's servant? You know, what we are saying in essence is that that is the absence of corporate governance and structure. Where there is no corporate governance and structure, abuse is inevitable. Corporate governance and structure is the totality of the method, practice, and code that ensure that a proper governance of an organization is established. And what is the aim? The aim of achieving the objectives in the best interest of all stakeholders. What we are saying is that is the structure that is laid, you know, you can call it, like the job description, just like you employing somebody. And when you employ the person say, this is your job. And just say, sit down there, this is your job. And you don't tell the person what you expect to get from the person. There's no laid down job description that this is what I expect, this is the deliverables that I want from you. At the end of the day, how do you judge whether the guy has done what he's supposed to do or not? It's the same thing with corporate governance and structure. The absence of it will always lead to confusion. The absence of it is that nobody will be able, there's nobody that will be held responsible. There's nobody that will be held culpable of what has happened. So that's why it's always very, very important. What are the importance of corporate governance and structure? It is important to stress that corporate governance and structure is based on 4 cardinal principles. Very, very important. What are these principles? The principle of fairness, accountability, responsibility, and transparency. Let me go over it again. The principle of fairness, accountability, responsibility, and transparency. Very, very important. If it is not fair, just like it happened in, I think it's Acts chapter 6, when the Bible says that the numbers of disciples were increasing. It says some people were not served. And what did that lead to? Led to grumbling. And what did the disciples do? Disciples, they had a foresight of what corporate governance and structure meant. They felt that, look, if there's no laid down structure, it would deter them from their main purpose, which is to preach the gospel. So what did they do? They looked for a way, I believe by the help of the Holy Spirit. All these things that we package, that we give name now, it's something that has been practiced, from the Bible days. I remember in the 4th dimension by late Dr. Yogi Cho, he said he was discussing with the doctor. And discussing with the doctor said, he had a lunch with the doctor, and the doctor said, Pastor, we just discovered something. I said, what is it? He said, we just discovered that the tongue controls every part of the body. Every part of the body. He said, he laughed. He said, Dr. Young Joe said, that has been discovered about 2,000 years ago. He said, no, it has just been discovered. I said, Dr. James in the Bible discovered that. So the corporate governance and structure that we're talking about, the apostles, they had an insight of it. They said, look, what we are going to do, let's lay down structures. Choose among yourself. They gave the criteria. Choose among yourself 7 people that will get to know as deacons today. This is what they will do. This is what we'll do. Where we devote attention, to the main purpose, where God left us, where Jesus Christ left us behind. That's the disciples saying it. And so, for you as a pastor, you're undertaking this course, you should have at the back of your mind that when there is a well laid down corporate governance and structure, you have people doing some other things for you while you concentrate on the main thing. One of the things, when we talk about the delegation of authority, one of the things I tell people, I said, as a pastor in a church, you cannot do everything. Imagine you come to church, you'll be the one that will sing, you'll be the one that will usher people in, you'll be the one that will You preach, you give announcement, and when the service is over, you'll be the one that will count the money, you count the figure. No. After some time, you're going to break down. So these are by the grace of God, we'll go to the nitty gritty of this that we are saying. How does it affect? Because I realized going through the list of the students, I realized that some of you are not general overseers, you are pastors of churches within a general overseer. And one of the things that you want to say is that are the things that you are learning. How do you put it to practice? Of course, you could put it to practice. How important is it? For example, I remember in 2009, I was posted to from being a church pastor to a zonal superintendent in a zonal headquarters church. And coming back, it's like asking God, what are you taking me back to that place to do? I remember God telling us vividly. Incidentally, that was where we left to go and pioneer the church. And I think that's about the third time we're going to leave to pioneer to come back, leave to pioneer. And so when we're leaving there, it's like I felt that I paid my due. I'm not going to back to that place. But God said, go back. I said, God gave us Genesis chapter 35, when God told Jacob to go back to Bethel. I said, God, the instruction of God was, said, go and build an altar. Three things there. Build an altar, build human beings, build an altar, build infrastructure, build an altar, build structure. The question is, was it that there was no structure in that place? There was structure. They had a structure, we had an organogram that I've been part of even before I left to Pioneer. But what I did when we came back was to look at the organogram and see the ones that are working and the ones that are not working. Take off the ones that are not working and let the ones that are working to see ways to improve on it. So even if you're a pastor of a local church, what we are saying now as part of the importance of the corporate governance and structure is for you to go back and think of how can you improve the structure. We'll still talk much about it when we're talking about how do you set up and how do you develop. The next thing to emphasize as we look at the importance and the necessity of corporate structure and governance is that the principle of corporate governance and structure is on how to make those saddles with the responsibility of the organization more responsible, more accountable, and more transparent. Don't forget, we talk about fairness, we talk about accountability, we talk about responsibility, we talk about transparency. If people you put in place don't know what they should do and what they should not do, remember, you cannot hold them accountable. So it's very, very important. We cannot overemphasize the importance and the necessity of corporate governance and structure. Corporate governance and structure is important to guide the development of the structure, the principles, and the practice in an organization. When we look at some churches in Nigeria, some churches has a global coverage. Look at their corporate governance and structure, what they have in place that will make people to be accountable, that will make people to follow the due process, the way things are done, so that things will be done properly. You have a very good understanding of what you're saying. What we are saying in essence is that the importance of corporate governance and structure cannot be overemphasized. So we'll now look at how to set up or to improve on corporate governance and structure. How do I set up if you don't have? But God is calling you to a ministry. God is calling you to start something. One of the things I want to stress from the onset is that the corporate governance and structure that we are talking about is applicable across board. What do I mean? It's not just for ministry purposes alone. It's something you could use if you're going to set up a business. It's something you could use, you know. What we're trying to just say in essence is let there be lay down rules and regulations in simple terminology. Let there be guidelines. This is what we'll do. This is the way we'll do. If this happens, this is what will happen. Decision taking. This is where the decision initiated from. This is what to do. That's what we're trying to explain. So what we're saying is that how do I set up or improve on existing corporate governance and structure if we have one? Number one, I want you to know that basically depends on the vision that God is giving you to pursue. One thing interestingly I've noticed is that some among us, when we receive vision from God on what to do, we're always very eager to start without asking Him about the blueprint of what to do. The person that is giving you the vision knows what to do. Remember what He told Moses on the mount. He told Moses, He said, make sure you build according to the pattern that you have been shown. So, the way you set up your corporate governance will be determined by what God is saying that you should achieve. I give my example when we're coming back to the church that we have the privilege to pastor now. It was specific. This is what I'm sending you there to do. And to the glory of God, when you are doing what God has sent you to do, you look like a magician. You know why? Because you are following the template that God has given you. You are not running your own show. You are just following the template that God has given you. So basically, setting up your own corporate governance or improving on it, like I've challenged those of us that are local church, that are church pastors, that we're not general overseer and not the big guys up there. It's that it is important. And like I said, it's applicable to your business also. It's important to know what you are called to do. Another thing to learn, another thing is that it's important that you learn from others. Like you are listening to this lecture now, you are learning. I learned many years ago, I think it was late Dr. Mies Moreau. He said, learn from others, but don't strive to be like them. Learn from others, but don't strive to be like them. You have your own uniqueness. What God is calling you to has His own uniqueness. But there's nothing like we are going to see when we get to the section that try to look at what others are doing, what other churches that have structures, what they have a corporate governance, what others are doing, like we'll see. It is very, very important that you learn from others, see what others are doing. People that have, in your countries, people that have well-laid structures, people that you can copy from. But like we say in the parlance, you said copyright. So even if you have to copy it rightly. But as much as possible, let your uniqueness, let it show. How do I set up or improve on existing corporate governance? I suggest that you wait upon God to receive the blueprint. I've said that, just repeating and emphasizing it. It's very, very needful to fulfill your vision, You can examine organization with similar aims and objectives, that is still learning from people, with the hope of learning from them. Another way you could set up, it's like, you must know for sure that you need a team. You need a team. You need a team to work with. You need a team to discuss with. And like someone said, which I really agree, he said one is too small a number to achieve more. You are too small a number to achieve more. You need a team, a team to be able to achieve this. And also, you might need to engage professionals to assist you. Get guys that could think inside and outside the box. Think well to be able to lay down what's just you need to do is just to share your idea with them. When you share your idea with them, will tell you that look, this will be the best, and suggest the best way. But remember, whichever way they suggest to you, always ensure that it's in line with the blueprint that God is giving you. And when you now say that, why taking professionals when God has spoken to me? There's nothing that says that you cannot run what God has told you through somebody else. Is it that they didn't know more than God? We're not saying that they know more than God. But see, when you receive a vision from God, God is giving you that vision, but you still need a team of people to actualize that vision. So it might be in it that you need someone to just explain it better. And remember, there's nothing that you are doing now that you have not done before. You should remember that. And so it's very, very important that you have that at the back of your mind. How do I set up or improve on existing corporate governance? That's what we are discussing. Very, very important. Read wide, attend training like you are doing now. Be determined to learn as much as you could on this topic. Read, read. My preparing for this lecture has actually opened me up so many other things about this particular topic that before now I didn't know. Always, someone said the day you stop learning. That's the way you start dying. You read wide, discuss with people, read, on various issues as it relates to this, and with that you'll be able to improve on what you've known before now. And also, it is important that for those of us that you already have a structure, like I told you, we'll go back to where we're pastoring now. We look at the organogram that we have on ground, and based on the organogram environments, what are the things that are working? What are the things that we can, how do we improve on the things that are working? What are the things that are obsolete that are not working? You see, one of the things that is one of the dynamism of life is change. I was telling someone, I said, I realized that people resist change even when they don't know why they are resisting it. They are so used to something, they are used to the status quo that they just want it to continue like that. So when you are bringing about change, they are willing to fight through. So as you want to improve on the existing corporate governance structure that you have already, have that at the back of your mind. Remember, there was a training I went for in Singapore in 2006. Also, call it the Aga Institute leadership training. I was so blown up. I was so happy, so excited. And I remember before we closed the training, he warned us. He said, see, some of the things that you have learned now, especially for those of you that you are not the leader, that's when you go back, don't think you are able to implement everything. I was counseling some people some few days back. I told them, I said, do you know that from that 2006, I was not able to implement some of these things until I went to pioneer a church again in 2016. Can you imagine? That's almost 10 years. But the desire was still burning inside of me. So if you are thinking of improving, don't let resistance to change make you to say that I should better keep myself. Maybe that's not the will of God. Thank you. You're welcome to the third section of this course. So I hope you've done all your assignments, and I hope the previous sections, so that if there's any area that you are not clear of, you'll be able to point it out, and we'll be able to address that. So, like I said, you're welcome to the third section of this lecture on corporate governance and structure. We want to look, among other things, at this section. We're going to look at what are the disadvantages of non-existence of corporate governance and structure. Number one, it's like a building without a foundation. You can imagine all the disadvantages of a building without foundation. So, the non-existence of corporate governance or structure is like having a building without foundation. Number two, is an indication of the absence of due process, procedure, on how things are done. There's no laid down plans, how things should be done. People do whatever they feel like. Remember, there was a time in the Bible that the Bible says that there was no king, there was no ruler, and people just do what they feel that was right. That was what they were doing. So the absence of the existence of corporate governance and structure, that's what it will lead to. It will lead to lack of trust in the setup because of the absence of transparency, accountability, fairness, and responsibility. One of the reasons why investors are always very, very careful, some investors, especially the credible ones, yes, there are some people, because they know they can cut corners in Nigeria, anything goes in Nigeria, they don't mind coming. But the credible investors, one of the reasons why they're always very, very careful in coming into the country is because of the lack of trust. So the absence of a well-structured corporate governance and structure will always lead to, not believing in the system, because there's no system to believe in. The way things are done now, you should be able to go on the net and look at if you are prospecting to have, an organization in the place. You look at what are the laws you are supposed to comply with, what are the things, what are the regulations. But when there is no transparency, there is no accountability, there is no fairness, there is no responsibility, what do you have? People will be skeptical. And that's one major disadvantage of the non-existence of corporate structure and governance. It will also encourage bad administration and corruption. Anything goes. Anything goes. There's no structure on ground. Somebody will just stand up today and become a demigod. It's like without him, nothing moves. And once you say it is not moving, because what? There's no corporate governance. There's no structure on ground. Another disadvantage is that it encourages unchecked power, which will lead to lawlessness and abuse. Remember the maxim: the absolute power corrupts absolutely. When there's no check and balance, you can just imagine the state government, there's no judiciary, there's no legislature to control. The man will just behave anyhow, whichever side of the coins, whichever side of the bed, depending on whichever side of the bed he wakes us from that day, will determine what will happen to the people that is ruling over. So, and since there is no check and balance, it will encourage, in church setting especially, it will encourage hypocrisy, high service, and hero worship. And we must be careful as servants of God. We must be very, very careful. Very, very careful. It's very, very important. Another disadvantage of non-existence of corporate governance and structure is that the organization will exist illegally. How? Since it will not be complying with relevant laws. There is laws that are to be complied with. So the absence of it, I've seen ministry operating without registration with the Corporate Affairs Commission. I've seen businesses operating with business name without registration. And they just feel that, look, we're not big enough, we're still small, we can do whatever we like. You can do whatever you like, get away with. But if you are starting something and you don't know where God is taking you to, so that it will not be as if when you start growing and you not go to the Corporate Affairs Commission to do your registration, they tell you that the name is not available. So where do you start from? That's why we need to be very careful. And like one other thing I must point out there is that when you do that, it will be very difficult for you to register. For example, you're a treasurer of an organization, of a group within the church, and because you're a treasurer of, is your account that they use. There'll be a level of, even if you want to trust you, there'll be a level of distrust. So one major disadvantage is that you will not be able, if you are living in disobedience by not complying with the relevant law, you will not be able to take advantage of what the law expects of you. And also, another disadvantage of the non-resistant of corporate governance and structure is that organization cannot grow beyond a certain level. Like I said now, if you are living disobeying the laws of the land and the regular and the relevant authorities, there are certain levels you can never go beyond. And there also be the absence of effective leadership. There will be an absence of effective leadership. So, what are the benefits? I will run through the disadvantages. What are the advantages or what are the benefits of corporate governance and structure? Number one, it will enable the organization to fulfill its primary aims and objectives. That is not much explanation. If you receive the blueprint from the Almighty God, you package it together, you are guided, you are focused. That's what that means. Number two, it helps the organization to follow due process and procedure. Everything is well laid out. We'll take you back to what happens in the book of Acts when the disciples, when they noticed that the enemy was coming, making them to derail, to serve bread instead of preaching the gospel. They laid down the rules, set 7 people, let them be in charge of service while we attend to this. So there was proper procedures, there was due process. Number 3, the organization will not be breaching any law as it comply with it. You will not be operating illegally. And as children of God, we should not operate illegally. We should not just, operate and thinking that after all, it's God that called us. You're only accountable to God. Yes, you are accountable to God, but you are subject to men. Remember, there is no authority that is in place without the permission of the Almighty God. So, another advantage or benefit of the existence of corporate governance and structure is that it will boost the corporate reputation of the organization. When people look at you from outside, by the grace of God, one of the things I pride in when I introduced myself as a member of First Gospel Church in Nigeria, yes, it's a Pentecostal church, but people know that it's a church with a different. When we look at some of the churches in Nigeria that has a well laid down corporate structure, corporate governance and structure, we look at Way Foursquare. Foursquare is one of the few churches that, as the senior pastor of the church, quarterly, I'm expected to report back to the church. And that's what we call the annual general membership meeting. I will report as senior pastor of the church, report back to the church, and the church membership, they are free to ask questions. Pastor, how did you spend this money? I became a member of Foursquare 30 years ago. So I watched growing up in the setting. I watched teenagers asking district overseers, senior pastors, sir, I need further explanation on it. And because there is transparency, there's accountability, there's responsibility, you are bound to answer. I said, who are you? Where were you? Have they born you when God called me into the ministry? It's not that what we are saying. So it boasts the corporate repetition of the organization. It also attracts better hands to the organization at the outset of it. People will be willing to work in a place where there is structure. They'll be happy to know what they are going into than where everything is, is unknown, is not open. Another advantage of it is that because there is well-laid structure, members of the team, members of the organization, they can fulfill their God-given potential. One of the things, when people know, you can use people for some time, but you can't use people forever. Still on the advantages of corporate governance and structure, I said it simplifies the decision-making process. It makes, if you are working in a place that has a very good corporate governance structure, it's easy for you to know where to go if anything is wrong. As unlike a place whereby that is not existing. Another advantage is that it helps for effective leadership. It helps provide effective leadership for the organization. What do we mean? Leadership is influence. One of the things that wane your influence on people is when they stop trusting you. When they stop trusting you, your influence over them start going down. So, corporate governance and structure, it encourages, you know, effective leadership. It can help attract support because there is process and transparency. That was what I was trying to explain the other time, at the last lecture. That when people know that they give you money, or they bring in money, or if they come to invest in what you are doing, they know there's transparency, there's fairness, there's accountability, there's responsibility. You know, they'll be willing to. Unlike a place whereby everything is just rooted in secrecy, they will not want to do. Another advantage is that it creates an atmosphere of fairness, accountability, responsibility, and transparency. Another advantage is that it helps to limit conflict of interest. Very, very important. You know the do's and don'ts. You can imagine, this incident in the US after the election, last election, and the people of the supporters of President Donald Trump, wanted to overrun the Capitol. Just imagine that. But because there is laid down structure on ground, people at that time, they were not thinking along party lines. The representatives in the House were not thinking along party lines. We're looking at how do we maintain the system that was handed over to us over 2,200 years ago. You know, if there was absence of well laid down corporate governance and structure, I'm very sure that we won't be talking about America the way we are talking about it today. Another thing that we know is that it helps reduce and eliminate disorderliness within the system. Where there is no rule, there's no sin. Thank you. You welcome to the fourth section, which is the last section for this course. I hope you've done all your assignments because at the end of it, we're going to look at it, the quiz. We're going to look at it when we are grading you at the end of it all. So this section we're going to look at some churches, some organizations that they already have structures. They have what we call corporate governance and structures. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be explaining because when you look at the slide, the notes, you see it's well laid down there, over there. And one of the church you want to look at, it's the 7 days Adventist, 7 days Adventist. Studying on this particular topic, we look at the church that was established so many years ago. One thing the founders of the churches did was to lay down, actually, the organogram, or we call, use the word that some of us understand, the organogram for the way and manner, the reporting system, the way and manner the organization is going to be run. Just look at the slide. It's well explained. Diagram is there. The chart is there. Just look at it. Another church that we also look at, it's the 7 days, the 7 days Adventist Church, SDAC for short. They have the corporate governance structure of the church. They have a general conference. You have the divisions. They call the union. They have what they call the conference. Then they have the districts, and after the district, they have what they call the local church, local parish. So these are some of the things. These are some of the things that when you look at, you'll be able to understand what we're trying to say. Another church that you see all this on your slide, with a brief notes on the churches. Another church which is has a global acceptance. It's the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is headed on their church governance, the corporate governance for the church is headed by the Pope. And you have the cardinals, you have the Catholic bishops, conference, talking about in like in Nigeria now, you have Catholic Bishop Conference of Nigeria. Then you have the Archbishop, the bishops, you have the priests, you have the deacons, then you have the ministries, then you have the ladies. That's you see, like I said, you're going to see everything on. And coming home now, another church that we looked at is the Redeemed Church of God. The Redeemed Church of God, of course, the Redeemed Church of God. It's a Nigerian church, and they have in their governance, they have the general overseer, they have the deputy general overseer, the assistant general overseer, they have the special assistant to the general overseer, you have the regional pastors, you have proficient pastors, you have zonal pastors, area pastors, and you have parish pastors. And of course, if you look at the Foursquare Gospel Church in Nigeria, we also have, you see it there also, we have a Garogram. The highest decision making body in Foursquare is what we call the business committee of the National Convention. Even the board of directors, they are subject to it. And immediately after that, you have the board of trustees. The board of trustees is what is recognized by the Corporate Affairs Commission. About the board of trustees, you have the board of directors headed by the general overseer. The good thing about those various boards in Foursquare is that the chairman of the business meeting of the National Convention, the general overseer, the chairman of the board of trustees, the general overseer, the chairman of the board of directors, the general overseer. And you also have, after you have the National Executive Committee, comprises of all the district overseers, all the head of ministries, and what have you, and some appointees by the general overseer. Under them, you have you have the National Ministerial Council. It's a council that is solely responsible for the welfare of the ministers in Foursquare Gospel Church. And coming down, you have the districts, you have the district council, in between you have the district council, headed by the district overseer, who is a member of the National Executive Committee. And breaking it down, you have the zonal superintendent, which I am one of them. Zonal superintendent, these are the members of the district council. All the zonal superintendents are members of the district council. And the zonal council, there's a zonal council. You have the zonal council made up of all the pastors and officers also. And when you break down that, you have the local church, which is headed by the pastor of the local church. The pastor of the local church in Foursquare also has his own church council for churches that are not chartered. So that's churches that have not met the requirement of being chartered. We have what we call pastors in charge, superintended over by their zonal superintendent. So that's the well-laid structures. And when we now come to the churches, like in the church I pastor now, the Zonal Christ Church by the grace of God, we have what we call the organogram. We have the boards, the head of boards. You have the senior pastor, of course. You have the pastorate. You have the council, the church council. Like the church council, they are not appointed; they are elected by the membership at the annual general meeting of the church. They elect them for 2 years. They can come for election, and maximally by when they serve for 2 tenures, which is 4 years, they have to just go there. We're talking about the corporate structure. So it's not a case of somebody just being the all in all, uncontrollable. It does, you hear some people say, look, I'm not accountable to anybody, I'm only accountable to God. The reality is that if you are not subject to people you can see one-on-one, you can't be subject to God. Stop deceiving yourself. And that's why it is always good when you don't have somebody that you submit to, you're a disaster waiting to happen. That's the truth. Say, I submit to God, I submit to no man. God that makes the woman to submit to man, he knows what he's doing. He said the man will submit. After the woman submits to man, the man will submit to Christ. He knows what he's doing. And so that's why it's very, very important for you and I. We've looked at this. We've looked at these various organograms of churches. Another one we'll have looked at it's the one for the Living Faith Ministry. It's really a very big one. Maybe in subsequent study, we'll be able to look at it. And one other thing I want to encourage you is that look at you could go online and search and see other corporate governance so that you're able to learn from. So if your ministry or the organization you are running does not have this, you now know the way to go about it. So the what we'll be looking at as we round up this course with this section is where we're looking at the laws and the regulatory bodies across. And I've been able to get some countries as case studies. You know, every country has its rules and body that is set up to regulate and provide framework for corporate governance and structure. For example, in Zimbabwe, because I remember I recognize that we have three of our Zimbabwe pastors, attending to this course. Corporate governance and parties are regulated by the Company Act. That is chapter 24.03, and the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange Act, chapter 24.18, and Public Finance Law, Public Finance Management Act, chapter 22.19. These are the laws that regulate corporate governance in Zimbabwe. In India, the Security and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, is the principal regulator for listed companies. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, and the company's registrar administer the Company Act of 2013. In the US, there are 4 key sources, that regulates corporate governance and structure. State corporate laws. Secondly, the Federal 1933 Security Act and the 1934 Security and Exchange Act, and the regulations of the Security and Exchange Commission, SEC. These are the 4 primary bodies that regulate the corporate governance in the US. In the UK, there is the mandatory and default rules and legal standard derived from the common law. Take into cognizance the Company Act of 2006 and the disclosure and transparency rules published by the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA. These are laws. These are laws that regulate in this country. And coming back to our dearly beloved country, Nigeria, the main laws which are the fulcrum of the corporate governance principle in Nigeria are: 1, the Company and Allied Matters Act. This established the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is responsible for the supervision, formation, and the winding up of companies in Nigeria. You have the Investment and Security Act. This provides for the establishment of Security and Exchange Commission. Then you also have charged with the responsibility of regulating the capital market, security investment, and the mergers and acquisition. You have the Banking and Other Financial Institutions Act, which governs the financial institution in Nigeria. Of course, you have the Insurance Act, among others. And finally, you have the FRC of Nigeria. That is the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. Why I emphasize that? You remember the hula baloo that arose when the FRCA, they promulgated. There was this law that there was this policy rules that they directed. They were trying to regulate. They want to make the non-profit organization, where the churches fall, to be more accountable, transparent, and more responsible. But so many church leaders, including my humble self, rose up that no, that is not, yes, it's done with good intention. But what happens if somebody comes in and now takes advantage of it? He said if the churches, after some years, the founders of the church must step aside and they must appoint new ones, like the bank in Nigeria now. You can only be the group managing director for maximum of 10 years. After that, no matter what, you must step down. These are some of the rules. These are some of the things. These are some of the regulations, regulatory bodies in some of these countries. The good thing is that one can always check up on the requirements of the law and the regulatory body in any country, anywhere in the world. In conclusion, I want to quote Bishop David Oyedepo. He said the collapse of any physical structure is as a result of the structural failure. In the same vein, the collapse of any organization, institution, industry, or church has proved to be the result of structural failure. We cannot overemphasize, unquote, we cannot overemphasize the importance and the necessity of a well laid out corporate governance and structure if we want our ministry to last and be impactful. Remember what the way he said nothing, Bishop Oyedepo also said, he said nothing without structure has a future. Have that at the back of your mind. And let's have what Jesus Christ said in Matthew chapter 7 from verse 24 to 29 when he talks about the wise person. He said the wise person is the one that hears his word and does it. He says like a building that is built on a solid rock. That storm of life came and nothing could shake it. He said, but the foolish man is like the one that will hear the word and will not do anything about it. He said, when the storm of life comes, to just carry everything that you have been building. Without what we are saying, in essence, that without a well-laid corporate governance structure, the ministry has no future. Yes, thank you.